He said, take a village to raise a child. But what if the village is retarded?
Today we're gonna look at black stoicism. Okay, basically black men and women that rely on certain philosophies, whether they are forced into it or not. Um, Behaviors and actions of stoicism. In case you don't know what stoicism is, let's give you the definition. It's an ancient philosophy. It's most noted going back to the Greeks, but Stoicism is is before the Greeks. In my opinion, even though they denote Stoicism to ancient, basically Greeks from Athens, right? It's an old philosophy that I will say that most people that probably are that exhibit certain behaviors towards stoicism, they're kind of forced into it. And black people, not to say it's just, just black people in general, but I think all people by circumstance are kind of forced into stoicism to a certain degree. And I'll break down the reason why, but because because basically the plight of black people in America, as far as our grandparents history, our history in this country, and basically springing forth from basically Africa, being thrown in dungeons and being boarded on ships to basically strange lands, right? That is pretty much the start of basically, you could say, black Western stoicism. Now, I said I was going to get a definition, started rambling off. Basically, stoicism, let me just get the definition first because I just going too deep. So basically, stoicism, they're saying, is an ancient Greek philosophy centered on using reason to live a virtuous life and achieve inner peace by focusing on what is within your control and accepting what is not. Like, I never really, looked it up. I mean, I always knew I knew what stoicism was going back in my university days, basically uh taking classes while I was majoring in sociology. We had to do a lot of different papers and discussions on different Greek philosophers like Plato and Aristotle and all of those pedophiles basically. We had to do a lot of different discussions on stoicism and nihilism and things of that nature. But stoicism, in short, to just give my own definition from what I just said, it is um basically a philosophy to live life basically um without basically giving up. I'll just say it like that. Because if I say it like that, most people will understand it very simply. Basically, you choosing to be functional, to live life the best that you can, and continue on. Okay, that's stoicism. And when you think of it as such, as I just said, in regards to black people in America, both black men and women um are to some degree or another have stoic values. Okay, um, because of the plight in this country as well as the current present plight, we have to endure quite a bit. Okay, you know, it's we have to endure from our own interpersonal conflicts, intercultural conflicts, and as well as outsiders. Okay, we take arrows from all vantage points and angles. And to a certain degree, uh, that is why life is very very difficult uh, for us. Okay, to a certain degree, some might be more than others. Okay, so because of that, black people have to be very very hardcore stoics. I didn't really know, I didn't have a name. I didn't have a name for this, but I understood when I was a little boy. When I was a little boy, pretty much always been surrounded by black people, and I noticed that life was very very hard for a lot of people. A lot of black people, life was very very hard, and these people continued on. I basically remember when a lot of project buildings were still up in Chicago. A lot of people lived in those project buildings, and they were clustered together. They had to survive that ordeal, basically being surrounded. A lot of people don't know that the projects basically were controlled by the gangs. So some project buildings, they had different gang factions that controlled those project buildings. You might live in a project building in Stateway Gardens. That one was a Black Disciple building. The other building might be a Gangster Disciple building. Another building might be a Blackstone building or a Vice Lord building. And those different buildings would have fights. They would have, internal fights. They would control the drug trade and different other illegal activities that they were doing. And people had to survive that. I remember hearing people, they still have documentaries. If you saw the documentary I think it was American Gangster. They showed you all of the different. They actually had different documentaries on different gangs and what happened, and different eyewitness stories and stuff like that. And one of the things I remember from watching certain documentaries on the projects, people would report that they would have to, like, it would be somebody that got shot or got killed. They would have to just basically walk over that person's dead body. They'd have to go, they're going back to their apartment, and they saw a dead person. They just have to walk over them, like almost like if you've seen a rat or a mouse or a dead insect or something, a roach. You just walk over it, right? And that's what these people had to endure, living in these that was like probably a bad day in living in the projects, walking past a dead body. Okay. But the thing is that this is not just that, it's just the overall reality of dealing with all of the things that you have to deal with in America, um, even given the fact that a lot of people, even and a lot of people call these people coons, but even black people gaslight the actual reality of racism and discrimination and different things like that. Even you have black people that actually gaslight that fact or minimize that reality to say as if there is no racism, there is no discrimination. There the only problem is the man in the mirror, right? So the thing is obviously other non-black people that's their common reaction as well, is to basically um gaslight and basically nullify uh that reality. And if you really just simply ask the person, in the lie detector test, obviously, uh, would you, if you had to choose, would you want to live as a black person or continue as a non-black person? Obviously, the lie detector would say that they would be lying if they said that they would have no problem with that. And in that very definition, um, of them, even if they, let's just say, were honest and say they don't, they understand that that card or that reality is something that they don't want any parts of, because they know that's a harder reality to deal with. Okay. So the thing is that even people are, they gaslight you for bringing those realities up, right? It's almost like, talking about the boogeyman or something. Why are you talking about the boogeyman? The boogeyman is just, he's not real. He's, type of thing. But the thing is that um those realities of living in this country, and I've stated those reality, like me stating the realities again, it just, it's irrelevant. As a black man in America, the realities of living in this country, even living in this world, basically. There is a situation of, basically being a byproduct of people that basically lost a lot of conquests. Like, I'm pretty scholarly because I basically educated myself long, like decades ago. I read, I did the work. I educated myself outside of typical European or white American, the white American basically collegiate system. And I basically self-taught myself, with reading books, like, basically like books like The Golden Age of the Moor by Ivan Van Sertima. Um, there's books like by Chancellor Williams, uh, The Destruction of the Black Civilization. These books take you back to antiquity. Okay, they take you back to basically you understanding that the byproduct of why your hardships are the way they are, as you being a black man or even woman in this country, is unfortunately the byproduct of lost conflicts, lost wars in Africa. And basically those realities of those lost wars, those conflicts, um, led to the reality that you have today worldwide, as basically, to a certain extent, being designated as a loser. Okay. Because, you know, that to over 2,000 years of wars that were some were won, and a lot were lost. I mean, mainly you could go back to basically uh, the Egyptian, basically Egyptian empire being ramsacked by, basically the Syrians, the Hyksos, the uh, Greeks, Persians, then later the Arabs, Arabians, right? Those things led to, you know, basically breaking into the interior of Africa, and thousands of years later, leading to, basically the transatlantic slave trade, going to South America, North America, and the Caribbean as well. And from all of that, you have a situation where, basically hardships and hard life followed. Okay. Not to say that, people are, it's not a lot of people that are doing great, and people are doing excellent, but the things that I said as far as the, collapse of civilizations, and going far as back, thousands of years, unfortunately, as well as slavery, those things happen. A lot of black people struggle with that idea, to the point where they have um, low self-esteem about their actuality of being black or being African. They have identity issues in regard to basically kind of being on a losing team, you know, and they struggle with that, to the point where they want to align themselves with non-black groups to run away, to that reality. Now the thing is that, um, understanding all of that, and basically, dealing with the reality of all of that, and continuing to deal with the after effects of all of that, basically is, basically black stoicism in a nutshell. you know um Basically continuing on no matter how hard it is, right? Like, for example, I'll just digress a little bit, and I'll talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. So, it, time changes, and those that are losers, um possibly can be winners, right, the following year, right? So basically, the Philadelphia Eagles, they wanted the Super Bowl last year. Okay. And I never forget, I was watching the Bears basically just, pulverize the Eagles, right? They beat them, pretty decisively, right? The Super Bowl winners of last year's Super Bowl winners, right? And it was even kind of weird because the Bears, they lost their first two games, I believe, or first three games, and people pretty much was, thinking that this was just pretty typical. The Bears is just gonna keep, they're just gonna have another losing season. Well, things turned around, right? And I'll never forget watching that Philadelphia Eagles game, and they, basically getting beat by the Bears. And, the Philadelphia Eagles, it's not like they have a losing season. They still have a fairly decent record. Okay. I think they're like 8-4 or something like that. They're still in playoff contention. But the Philadelphia Eagles fans, it was almost like they never won the Super Bowl. And it's almost like they, you would kind of get that sentiments for, when the Bears play at home, that their fans were booing them. The Philadelphia Eagles fans were booing the Eagles as if, they were just losing the whole season. Like they're a losing team. Like you would think that the Philadelphia Eagles were the New Orleans Saints, or what's another losing team? The Arizona Cardinals or something like that. And it's like, for one, they just lost a few games. They won the Super Bowl last year, and the fan had no patience. They had no cares about none of that. The fact that they were losing right then and there, and losing to, supposedly the worst team in the NFL, or worst franchise, one of the worst franchises in the NFL, right? The Chicago Bears, they were booing their team that just won the Super Bowl last year. Okay. And I say all of that to say that, basically, um, I forgot the reason why I brought that up. I literally, I literally forgot the reason why I brought that up. It was a reason why I brought that analogy up. And I mean, basically, um, I don't know why I brought that analogy up. I was talking about, basically, the plight of black people in America, and dealing with civilizational collapse, and basically, being transported to, you know Western countries from, Africa during the slave trade. And then I brought up the Bears and the Eagles. um it almost makes me want to rewind my video to actually see what I was actually talking about. But that's something more or less you could do in an upload, or video or something. Pause it and then go back to it. But nonetheless, I mean, basically, if I was tying that into how fair weather the Philadelphia Eagles fans were, right? Like the Bears, you could understand the Bears fans doing that. Philadelphia Eagles fans doing that after their team just won a Super Bowl last year, and not having any patience and giving their team boo birds, um, while they're playing, and they're losing. I mean, like at the very least, like I would expect that maybe, like, let's just say the team doesn't win next year. The next year they just suck, and then they have a losing record. I would expect that. But it's like they just won the Super Bowl, and seeing how fair weather, these fans were, it just like, it's almost like these people are spoiled, and they're just so spoiled, and they just want their team to just win all the time. And it's like the Bears fans are watching that shit, probably like, damn, well, shit, we got something to boo about. But as far as, we've had decades of losing seasons and all of that, like, damn, these people don't have no patience. But anyway, that's, like I said, I forgot I forgot the whole point of why I was bringing that story up. I definitely will probably, once I hear the playback, I'll definitely figure that out. But yeah, it's something to it though, as far as as far as why black people have to be it be stoics. We do have to by default. Not saying anybody else. I mean, a lot of people, life is hard on this, spinning rock, right? It's very, very difficult. It's not necessarily easy. Um, Yet at the same time, uh a lot of black people are forced to be stoics. They're very much even at an early age, they're forced into stoicism, even not knowing what stoicism is. you know they're forced into it by proxy of circumstances. Basically, you could just say, okay, growing up, generational fighting, dealing with generational poverty. A lot of black people, they have some type of generational poverty story. you know and for other groups, that might not be the case. Very well, it's not the case. um and those things, the reason why those things exist is because of partly dealing with this system in this country, and trying to overcome those things. It makes life very, very difficult. It makes it almost um impossible to deal with, because if you turn the tables, right, a lot of what black people deal with, most other groups will probably start a war overnight. They wouldn't want to put up with it, because we actually deal with so much, and we continuously deal with it. And other groups, they would not deal with it. A lot of this, like when I'm a lot of what I'm talking about is like, it reminds me of like a Chris Rock stand up. Because Chris Rock talked about these things on his, on a national stage on his stand ups. He talked about how, if like a white person, it's a one, he was like, his line was, it's a one leg bus boy, that a white one leg bus boy that wouldn't want to replace him, and he's rich. Just basically saying how bad of a deal that is, right? How much of a struggle that is to be growing up in this country, black, and in this country. And the thing is that it is very, very much like playing on hard mode when you are, black in this country. That's something that I'll stand on. Other people will gaslight that, or find a way to gaslight it. But you know, one thing I'll tell those people, okay, well, why don't you come live in the hood for a while? Come to the ghetto for a while. And I bet you one, you won't do it, and then two, you know why you won't do it, because you probably have nightmares about that place. But you got people that live that life every day. They live there every day. And I am no different. I've lived in ghettos, and vested in ghettos. And I've lived there. you know and the thing is that um those places are filled with people that are forced to a very much sense to be kind of hardcore black stoics. Not even, and again, not even knowing what Stoicism is, not knowing anything about Greek philosophy or naming any Greek philosophers. They are, pretty much stuck into this life of, hardcore living, basically living in the trenches, basically living in an environment that is pretty much very similar to an environment of a civil war, living in a war zone. In certain places in Chicago it's like a war zone. That's the words that is used. This is a war zone. So, the thing is that going through all of that, living that reality pretty much puts a lot of black people in a spot where they grow up different than a lot of other people. They grow up hardcore, you know. There's NFL scouts, and this is not why I mentioned the actual story about the Bears and the Philadelphia Eagles, but a lot of NFL scouts, they like to choose particular players that do have a hard life and have saw some type of resilience in them to overcome their hard life, because those players tend to be tougher. The outcome of black stoicism is, and even just the life of being discriminated against based off of your cultural identity. It makes being passed away over, with missed opportunities, or even the possibility of an opportunity. All of these things make this hardcore individual. And and I've said this before, and I've said I was going to do a video on this, and then this is the video. The reason of them doing that is because they just that's what they want to do. It's human competition, you could say. Racism is a form of human competition. What the byproduct of that, of making basically denying people opportunities based on their ethnicity, it does make this hardcore individual. Okay. And it makes a group of hardcore individuals. Of course, these men, a lot of times, even women, have have to a certain extent, um do illegal activities to make a living, and then they get caught, and then they go to jail, go to prison. Some don't. They even go lean into it even further, as far as being a stoics, and they not only have hardships, they stay out of trouble. They don't, they're dotting their i's and crossing their t's. They're not doing anything to try to get arrested or go to jail, go to prison. They're not taking any penitentiary chances. And they're, just dealing with life. The byproduct of these actions towards putting these unnecessary pressures on particular people based off of basically their ethnic identity, what you're making is, and I've said this in the other video, is you're making hardcore stoics. And in a lot of the black community, you have men and women that are harder as far as their nature and their behavior than the average American, or just everyday Americans. And that's why you have men and women that are, very exceptional when it comes to, even if you want to talk about athleticism. I mean, some of that has to do with genetics and micro muscle fibers and all kinds of different muscular frames and stuff like that. But you add that to a person that's had a hard life than the average American, right? That basically might may not be black, right? You make this person basically kind of like a person that's been in warrior mode their whole life, or most of their life they've been in warrior mode. you know um Unfortunately, these people, you create um more stoics, and when it comes to these stoics, they're on a different level than other people. They're not Other people have an easier life, and they have more of a privileged life, right? Because maybe they are left alone, they're not bothered, they're not discriminated against, they get any opportunity that they want, whatever the case may be. Those people still have to compete with everyone else. Everyone still has to compete. And I don't know what the outcome or what the overall, desire for people that do discriminate on black people, what their outcome, what they want. I guess I would say they want, black people to go away and just die, right? Or go away and disappear to oblivion, right? You don't have any opportunities. You don't have, you get constant discrimination. So it's hard to get certain opportunities or keep them. When you're at a job site, or you work somewhere, a lot of times, and I know other black people, they can relate to this. You damn near have to be a perfect robot in a job site, right? Or in your job. Is this to say you are not allowed to make mistakes? Any mistake that you make, or if you continuously make mistakes, you don't have any grace. But others, that are non-black, they have unlimited grace, or they are almost protected, as if they're part of a union or some shit. But you, as a black person, you don't get that same grace. As soon as you mess up, you're let go. Soon as you make one error, you're out the door, right? But you see that in the sports too. In the NFL, you could be basically a terrible white quarterback for years, right? You have a contract. You can have re-sign the contract. That's what happened to Jay Cutler in the Bears. You could just be basically a mediocre quarterback, or even below average quarterback, terrible quarterback, and have a job for years. You could go to team, but if you're black and just so much, you're a black quarterback, you have 1 year to turn it around. If you don't turn it around in a year, we might give you two, but in that second year, it's you're out the door if you don't perform, right? Those are the things that are basically black people understand and might talk about behind closed doors, or in different discussions, that others don't have to deal with. They don't have that problem. That's not an issue. And all of these things culminate into a situation to where you creating these hardcore men and women that are tougher than the average person. You know, for women to be tough, I mean, it might not be attractive as far as things is concerned. That's why you see a lot of women that are a lot of black women are very, very tough and very masculine because of the breakdown in society, in black society, you know, and basically a father. A lot of women, they don't have a father as a covering. You can most notably tell a black woman that was raised with a father figure by the way that she reacts, the way that she uh even talks. You can tell if she's been raised with a father or not. A lot of times with women that they're not raised with fathers, if you notice their interactions, even you can see it online when with their interactions, they have a problem looking men in the eyes, and they have a problem communicating with men because they're not used to communicating with men. You know, your father was the first male that you probably communicated with. You know, if you maybe had an older brother or brother, maybe possibly, but that wasn't a man. Your brother was a little boy, and maybe some other cases maybe he might have been older, but um typically your father is your first interaction with a male, adult male, right? So when a lot of times when women don't have that around or they didn't grow up with that, they have almost like you could kind of like spot the low self-esteem. You can easily spot it, and you can almost see it in the interactions of how they even look at men and interact with them. You could tell you can see that lack, right? And that leads to, without that male covering, women typically have a harder, both men and women have a harder life growing up without that covering, without that protection. One of the major things that men do that is the most valuable is our ability to protect. Even a lot of women don't understand this because they don't have the wisdom maybe yet, but the ability for men to protect is more important than the ability to provide. And I'll explain why. The reason being is, if it's very common sense. Well, it doesn't matter how much you provide, right? Doesn't matter. You could be a billionaire. You could provide billions of dollars, and you can have your family lapping in luxury with billions of dollars. If you can't protect your family from invaders or intruders coming into your home, it's all it takes is one day, one bad day of no protection or inadequate protection, and pretty much the wife is dead, possibly the children are dead, the husband is dead, everybody's gone because the father was not able to protect um, that wife and children. The ability for a woman, the ability for a man to protect is the most valuable reason or value that a man provides, is that protection. And you could even say maybe some women there getting comely about this conversation because they like, well, that's why I got my thug. That's why we like thugs. Well, to a certain degree, I can understand that sentiment, but where the thug provides protection, possible protection, um, is life is all about balance. I'm not saying that protection is not valuable. I'm telling you that protection is definitely valuable. But if you just are, a protector, and you can't provide anything, you can't, you have a hard time with gathering provisions as a man for your family. Well, what good also is protection if you have nothing really to protect? You have no provisions. Okay, you know you're in a house with, the refrigerator is empty, the cabinet in the pantry is empty because there's no provisions. There's no, things that you need to take care of living arrangements, as far as like cost of living items, like paying for food, clothing, shelter, food. Well, okay, you you could live in a homeless shelter, and then you definitely, protection will be a lot more, a lot more difficult in that regard. But provisions is also needed. Provisions is also important. And where a lot of women mess up when they get with men that are, let's just say, criminals, hardcore criminals, because that's what a thug is. A lot of times those men get arrested and they go to jail, and it's almost like a gamble that women play, where they have children by these men, they have, great protection. I would even say even great sex. I'll give you that. But where it's a gamble, you're dealing with a man that cannot really, he not to say he's not a stoic, but he doesn't know how to make money legally. So he's gambling and taking a risk, and if he gets caught, which a lot of them do, they go to prison, okay, for a period of time. And then, not only while the man is in prison, they don't have any protection because they gambled on this man. They have no provisions either. So not only do you not have any provisions, you have no protection and anything else that you wanted from a man. So that's the gamble that women play with that card. But protection is definitely important. It's very, very important. For men and women, protection is everything. Without, the reason why you're here today, the reason why you're breathing, is because someone protected you. Your parents, most likely, then your grandparents protected your parents. And basically, this went back, thousands and thousands of years. And that's why you exist, because people were able to protect your ancestors was able to protect you in some regard or another, or they were able to survive, right? So the thing is that, yes, um you do have a lot of these men that are these hardcore stoics that you wanted to wither away and die and have this hard life and never amount to anything. But that that typically doesn't happen, especially now. Okay. You can't, a lot of what white people are trying to do, and they're struggling to understand this, is they want to have a life like the present, with technology and AI and the internet and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth technology and all of these different technical inventions that we enjoy and everything like that. And quite a few of those technologies had something to do with Black people coming up with the ideas and inventing these ideas, right? they want this modern technocracy uh with a reality that's like 1950 or not, or even 1960. And unfortunately for white people, that will never happen again. That was just a period of time, just like other times were periods of times that existed, and that reality does not exist anymore. And the reason why they want that to be the reality of it being 1950 and 1960s, when I'm not saying all white people want this. It's, the particular, I would say basically your hardcore racist whites would like this reality. But the thing is, the reason why they wanted to be like that is because, white people were able to kind of deal with black people um easier, in a sense of being able to position themselves over black people. At one particular time in this country, there were Asians, there were, Hispanics, but primarily it was mainly just whites and blacks as far as population. It was mainly a white, primarily a white and black country with, it wasn't that many Hispanics in this country as it is now. It wasn't that many other ethnicities in this country, back in like the 1950s and 40s and stuff like that. But now you have a lot more multiculturalism, you could just say. A lot of different ethnic groups in this country, right? So the thing is that um that time frame, it was just that time frame. This is a new paradigm. It's a new reality. Every day is a new reality, and that reality of it being 1950 and 1960 60s, where um you know I guess to a certain degree, a lot of black people were more, I guess, by proxy of them having to um deal with a different power dynamic than today. They had to be more subservient to white people. They had to be very adherent to white people back then. Now it's just pretty much every man for himself. That's pretty much how things are. Black, not to say that black people are still um they're still beholden to white people. They're very much beholden to white people because white people have a lot of control over the economics in this country, have a lot of economic power. So that's why black people that don't know how to basically franchise themselves, or let's just say go on their own, they're very beholden to a job. And most likely the person or company that they're going to work for is going to be a white owned company. And by proxy of their financial position, most black people are very much in a financial position that they have to work for someone else. Okay, and usually that is a non-black company that they are applying for to work. If they're looking for a job, or if they're already working for a company, is predominantly a white-owned corporation or company. So those things still remain, in a sense of being beholden to um white corporatocracy, or white corporate, or white uh corporate interests in the United States. And white people know that. White people know that what black people's position is. And in the tripped out thing that that really trips me out about a lot of, well, some black people or whoever, this is, whoever has this thought or mindset. It's like as if black people don't believe white people see them. They act like black people act like they don't, like their dirty laundry is not seen. There is, like, white people don't see the ghettos, or they don't know they exist, or they don't know what's going on in these ghettos, or what's going on in the streets, so to speak, right? And it's like when I see black people being surprised or being taken aback when white people air out black people's dirty laundry, and they're surprised, or you know even would try to gaslight that situation of them pointing out the dirty laundry. It always surprises me that that someone will actually believe white people can't see them, like they're ghosts, and then they can't see what's going on, right? And it's funny because me being a chess player, I understand strategies and positions, and the board alignment and the center movement and all of that stuff. I mean, basically, in a nutshell, not only do they know what's going on, they position themselves through daily, actions to basically kind of, to a certain extent, uh push black people in those certain paradigms and positions. And it's like they, in a nutshell, to a very much sense, they're very much the architects of that reality of the ghettos in America, and different black communities where black people are struggling with unemployment and poverty and crime and such. They for every no on a job application, when you're qualified or whatever, for every missed opportunity due to you being not the right complexion for the connection or whatever, they know those things will bring a certain level of hardship, right? That missed opportunity is another day of being unemployed. They know that. So it's surprising to me, when I hear and see black people being surprised that white people know where the dirty laundry is and how it smells and what it looks like. But I mean, nonetheless, the thing is that this reality, day in day in this country, makes these hardcore stoics. Okay. These hardcore warrior men and women that have to endure daily, weekly, yearly, monthly hardships. And it just makes a person individually hardened. Black people do pretty exceptionally well in certain regards, in certain categories, like, for example, middle class. Most black people, believe it or not, I could, I know I'm hardcore as far as, the realities of pointing things out. I mean, this is I would say, I've said this many times over, but this is like pretty much a black pill channel. I don't sugarcoat. I don't have any narratives. I'm not trying to protect anyone or trying to hold back. I mean, I hold back in the sense of I don't go full overboard. I don't go zero dark. I don't go zero darkness on here and just start just pointing out all kinds of crazy shit because just YouTube doesn't allow that, and I understand that. And then also, people will probably be scared and petrified if I, pointed out a lot of the things that I know exist that other people don't. You know, I don't want nobody to go have to check themselves into a fucking mental hospital because there's things that I do actually know. Most of it I don't even say or mention it about what I actually know versus what I actually put out as far as the facts that I put out. But I'll say for the most part, I'm pretty vocal and I pretty much say most of it. But the thing is that when it comes to um the actuality of those actions of going out of your way to make black people's lives harder due to whatever reasons, that's making these people harder. And my last video about this, I think I talked about this about a month ago or whatever. And I it was almost like a warning. I was saying, you keep doing this, it's not gonna make it better for you. It's not overall. Because see, here's the thing. This is what this is what trips me out. It's just in general about white people, Europeans. It's as if they don't understand what karma is. Okay. It's like they don't really believe. I know a lot of people don't believe in karma. I do understand that. I get that. A lot of people don't believe in karma. Okay, well, that's one thing. And karma is one man's karma is another man's law of reciprocity. Okay, law of reciprocity is a universal law. Okay, and it's related to karma. Okay, it's the European version of the Indian word of karma. Um, it pretty much believes in it pretty much is what goes around comes around. And one of the things that I do understand about the law of reciprocity and karma is pretty much two in the same. And when you whatever you give out, it comes right back around to you. And unfortunately, because a lot of white people don't believe in this law, or maybe they understand it too late. I don't know. It is really, really taking a toll on their reality. Because the law of reciprocity is real. Karma is real. Okay, karma goes back to that before even India. It goes back as far as 2,500 years. But it's that's just from India. The law of reciprocity is been around since there's a universe. That's why these are called universal laws. That's why it's careful. Like most people that are, let's just say, godly, right? They believe in some type of higher being or higher order. The reason that they try to strive towards righteousness is because of that faith in that high order, that higher dimensional being, right? That omnipresent being that was watching over you. That's typically why people try to be righteous. Well, I'm no exception to that. But I also understand karma. I understand the law of reciprocity. So therefore, I try to not do people harm or do people wrong, or even try not to think negative thoughts. That is, a fact. And the thing is that a lot of what I see in the world is people that don't believe in karma, that don't believe in the law of reciprocity. I mean, even to be honest, you know, the law of reciprocity covers all aspects of life. I mean, even in the black community, okay, you reap what you sow, right? You reap what you sow is the law of reciprocity. Look at the black community, the decisions that they've made, the women decisions that they've made. They unfortunately have to cry in silence, in darkness or whatever, because they have to deal with the decisions that they've made. And a lot of times the decisions that they made are not great, right? Black women have made terrible decisions as far as who they chose to mate with and have a family with, and that led to them basically basically having a breakup and having to raise a family by themselves or deal with co-parenting or whatever the case may be. And that is what it is, right? That is the law of reciprocity. Okay. You reap what you sow. Okay. And the thing is the black community, good or bad, is the result of that, of reaping what you sow, of the law of reciprocity. So I'm not saying, okay, I'm not just gonna jump karate kick white people in the throat, um just just and not say, okay, there's some role to play as far as black people, in their day-to-day interactions and their beliefs as well, because a lot of times black people are influenced by the dominant group, and the dominant group is, basically white America. They believe the same foolishness that they believe. There's no karma. There's no law of reciprocity. There absolutely is. And it's very much so. You reap what you sow. What goes around comes around. They just in Chicago, there was a chick, she was living in the north suburbs, kind of near a town near basically O'Hare International Airport, and basically a pretty nice. Des Plaines, Illinois is a pretty nice suburb, right outside of Chicago, close to O'Hare Airport. She was dealing with a lover's quarrel with a hood chick and a hood dude, in Chicago. A few months ago, she got into some type of situational, like some type of like argument over the both of them shared a child with this guy, and she basically shot this mother, killed her. And then basically, I guess, Chicago police, it took them as long as they did, and they finally arrested her. She's in jail right now, no bond, because she has to reap what she sows. Okay. I was kind of, I didn't really precisely know what I wanted to talk about. And I was thinking about some things before, and I was thinking about, I see a lot of different videos and stuff like that. And I just think about, as far as making choices, as far as who you lay with, as far as even a man, right? A lot of times men, we get so horny, we sleep with anybody. That's one of the things that women count on as men. They count on men that are um so thirsty and horny that they'll just sleep with anybody, and they don't have any discipline whatsoever, and they're counting on that man to, basically put everything aside, and just be and go with his carnal nature and sleep with them, and make a baby with them, because they need you for survival. And one of the things that I've thought about is how when you're, two people in survival mode, I guess that's okay. But a lot of times, what men do is they basically choose women that are in survival mode. And a lot of women are in survival mode. They're in a state of, they're in a bad state. They need help. They need a savior. And they're looking for that. They looking for, and it's not like, okay, see, the thing is, okay, Sade, she had a song, and it was called Somebody Broke My Heart. Somebody already broke my heart. And in that song, she was mentioning that she needed a savior, and it's like, okay, I get it. Okay, if you need a savior, you need a savior. But one of the things that I don't get, and I've dealt with this before, this is a personal story, you know, when a woman, because a lot of women just raise ass backwards, right? In the black community, that's pretty common, right? They'll get that savior, and then basically put that savior through hell. They will just basically throw that man under the bus, then cry after he leaves. But that's mental illness, right? But the thing is that what I'm saying is, a lot of times, if you're choosing a mate, you shouldn't, as a man, if you're in a decent state, should not choose a woman that is in survival mode. I can help you from a man that's, basically pushing 50, black man in America, black stoic man in America, one of millions, right? Older men. I could tell you, you'll have a better situation as far as who you choose if you avoid two things. Now, if you're in survival mode, okay, I could understand. This is not for you. But if you're not, if you can avoid choosing women that are, one, in survival mode, and very ungrateful. Because, see, a lot of women, especially in the ghetto too, there a lot of women are in survival mode, but they're ungrateful. Women used to always been women in survival mode. That's nothing new. But the women of old, they used to be grateful for a man that have saved them, right? They, the Prince Charming, on horseback, saving the damsel in distress. I mean, that's, it's a book that, it's a women used to read books like that. They used to love, fairy tales like that, right? Well, women now, because of how they're raised, and layers and layers of mental illness and generational mental illness, and family, breakups, and generational poverty. They weren't taught, they don't know anything about how to be grateful for men, right? And that's where the problem is. But if you could avoid women that are in survival mode, one, and then if you really could, I know this is going to be very, very difficult, but if you can avoid women that basically were not raised with their father, if you were raised with your father and your mother, like a nuclear family, if you can get a woman that had the same type of upbringing that you've had and is not in survival mode, that that is like basically one of the best things you could do, because when you avoid women that are in survival mode, especially the ones that are ungrateful, right? Because if they're in survival mode and you're able to help them, you're literally their savior, right? It's supposed to be your humble servant to the day they die. Like, that's how that shit works, unfortunately. But a lot of people don't understand and don't look at it like that, especially women, till after the fact. They'll say some stuff in hindsight. But the thing is, if you can avoid that, you avoid a woman that is just basically trying to get in a relationship out of desperation. One, because it's not necessarily about no love or companionship or anything. It's a person is desperate and is in survival mode, literally needs someone to rescue them. And you avoid that type of situation. It's a lot of things that you avoid from that. And usually women that are brought up in a family with a father in the household, it's just usually a totally different woman, a totally different experience, totally different woman. Those are I just have to, point that out, like, because I know it's some young men out here that's, still disillusioned, you know, um, you can't say I didn't tell you so. So don't come back talking about when you mess your head up and you hit your head on the pole. Don't say nobody ain't told you. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have for tonight. I just had to come on here because it was necessary, and I'm glad I did. You know, um, so I got my video slides back, and I'm paid a little fee or whatever for StreamYard. So I'm back in business. See how long this will go. But yeah, it's just a reminder. Um
He said to me, my grandfather walked 10 miles to work every day. My father walked 5. I'm driving a Cadillac. My son is in a Mercedes. He said my grandson will be in a Ferrari. But he said my great-grandson will be walking again. So I asked him, I said, well, why is that? And he said to me, tough times create strong men. Strong men create easy times. Easy times create weak men. Weak men create tough times. He said to me, many will not understand, but you have to raise warriors.